building business knowledge from the insights.
Amid geopolitical tensions and the threat of pandemic outbreak, every country keeps close eyes on the key issues that have been emphasized in the China's 14th five-year plan of economic and social development. This five-year plan, starting this year until 2025, aims at speeding the Made in China 2025 policy and serve a long-term vision plan to achieve fully developed economy by 2035. Science and technologies continue to be the main theme, especially AI, 5G communications, EV development, and the most crucial, quantum computing. Dual circulation is a strategic approach for China to use in conquering this plan. We asked Dr. Phaichit Viboontanasarn, the Vice Chairman and Secretary General of the Thai Chamber of Commerce in China, for his insights. Welcome, Dr. Phaichit, to Biz&Beyond, and thank you very much for joining us today. Now, let's talk about the President Xi Jinping's recent economic strategies, referred as dual circulation. I think that basically the dual circulation pattern is served for the country to boost the domestic consumption and also to help improving the key technologies and reducing the dependence on the innovation from the US and some of the European countries. Now, in your opinions, do you think that the dual circulation pattern would cause any change or disruption to the global trade and global supply chain or not?
Okay, thank you for the questions. And thank you for the invitation to Biz&Beyond today. I think first of all, let me put it this way. The dual circulation economy, or sometimes some of the academians may use as the strategy, is rather new. In fact, President Xi Jinping has mentioned about the dual circulation economy for a few months before, and then Li Keqiang, the Prime Minister, when on March the 5th in the morning, if you follow the Liang Hui, the people of Congress, meeting. In that morning, President Li Keqiang, report the government performance, which is quite normal. They have to do the annual report, to the Congress, every year anyway. But one of the issues involved the dual circulation. They try to tell, or get approval of the 14 plan, the 5-year 14 plan, of China, which is run from the year 2021 to 2025. Now, in detail, why China is pushing this one, today? It's not new in terms of the idea, because China realized the weakening of the world economy for quite some time, say about 10 years. So they try to boost the economy from the inside out at a higher degree. Because if you look back, when they opened up the countries 40 years ago, they gained the benefit from the outside in, which is the trade and investment from the outsiders, from foreign countries. But China realized that the world economy was rather weak at that time. So they say, well, instead of just sit there and wait for the result, they're doing this as the proactive approach. By putting this as the key policy, try to boost up or maybe revolutionize the structure of the economies by putting more on the inside-out approach. What is the key issues on this? This is involve the domestic consumption at that time. So after running for about 10 years of this policy, they realized that now we are running to like COVID-19, we are running to trade war, tech war, etc. So China said, well, why don't we lift up this policy to another level? That's how the dual circulation economy come into the pictures. So now what they're trying to do, they're running two things at the same time. One is the domestic side and the international one, or domestic cycle and international cycle. For the domestic one, or both of them are involving two things in principle. One on the supply side. I think China is sending the signal to the world that right now China will be relying more on their own supply chain. Okay, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get involved, in the international arenas, but they will say, well, if they can maybe come up with their own innovation, technologies, etc., or even linking up, a better supply chain domestically, they will do it. How are they going to do it? That's one thing. That's another thing. For example, if you listen to the Ling Hui, the meeting there, they also mentioned about the research and development. Okay, China will put 7% each year on the research and development per GDP.
Right.
Okay.
And I heard that 2% is sexy enough.
Right. Normally in other countries, 2-3%
Right.
is big enough, but they put it more at a higher level. It's even higher than the growth of GDP that they expected.
Right.
Because this year they expected 5 or 6, but averagely over the 14 plan should be about 5%. But the research and development, right, now they put 7% of the GDP. So the proportion of the research and development to GDP will be increasing, at least, in the first 5 years from now. So they will come up with new technologies, new innovation. I think new gadget, a lot of new gadget will come up, from China.
Right.
They also would like to send a signal, to the Western world, because in the past, China tried to draw the investment, especially from the high-tech company into China. Since then, some of them have come, and invest in China, and some of them not, right? Or even in the Trump administration, they even try to block, the investment from the US and other, the partners into China. So China now say, hey, we are ready, we would put more not only on the applied research and development, but also on the basic research and development. So in other words, they would do it by their own. So the supply chain, okay, for China, I think will be even more better, even better, in the near futures. Well, what have shown this, if you look at last year, during the COVID-19, okay, we will see that China is probably the only major countries that still have a very precise and confirmed and flexible, sexy supply chain. They still can produce everything basically and sell it all over the world. So last year, that's why in terms of trade, China have gained, the trade balance over many countries, in the world. Okay, this is part of it because the supply chain in the country, is like very, I would say, very precise and flexible, on this. Now, on the other side, on the demand side, okay, China in the past, of course, we always say they have only the quantity side, okay, but after 40 years of development, they have boosted up, the GDP per capita for the local people. And also last year, they also, they're going to celebrate, officially the fight, with the poverty, of the local people.
Right.
And they say they have won it already. So on this, that means in terms of China, they also have the demand in terms of the purchasing power on the quality issues as well. So with all this, instead of relying on, the purchasing power from the outside, they say they would rely more on in a higher level, of the purchasing power domestically. So look at this. I think overall China is telling everyone that right now the world need to rely on China more than China rely on the world these days. Okay.
So, but the China's road towards becoming the full developed economy by 2035, as President Xi Jinping has initiated, but yet they have several key issues concerning China's we call legitimacy. For example, the issue between Taiwan and also Hong Kong, and global securities like cyber securities from Huawei case, and also the recent case, the Uyghur Xinjiang case for humanity issues. Would these issues will become some things that hinder China from making the road forward as planned?
Okay, let me put this for the audience to understand. This time, one good thing or special issues about the People Congress meeting is that they not only consider the 14 plan, the 5-year 14 plan, but also involve the Vision 2035. So basically, instead of planning for 5 years, now they set up the roadmap for another 10 years. So they are putting 15 years ahead, down the road, what they're going to do. Okay. Now, back to the issues that you just mentioned. I think it could happen. It could happen. But as I say, right now, China will come back and rely more domestically. Okay. In the report of Li Keqiang in the morning of the 5th, March the 5th, that I mentioned earlier, you may notice that Prime Minister Li Keqiang mentioned about the international cycle only one time out of about more than 1 hour of his speech. Now, for China, this is very important. Yes, it sent a very clear signal that China will not rely or be oneself, be the one Chinese self. Even at a higher level, they would not care much about the Western world. And if you look at the meeting, at Alaska, at the U.S. Foreign Prime Minister, ministers, Anthony Blinken, with the Chinese side, Yang Jiechi. I think also China sent a clear signal as well that the U.S. and the partner should not do anything, like this to China and other countries. And China would not bear, after this meeting, they go back and they do the press conference. The Huo Xinying, the speaker of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, come out and say there's a thin line that the U.S. and the partner should not cross it, right? And then China would not bear on this kind of
attempt. So China just tell the U.S. in the polite way that don't cross the line. And this is like internal issues that they can manage by themselves.
Right. Even during the discussion, there are so many polite ways that China have told, the U.S. side. For example, at the very beginning, Yang Jiechi mentioned like, "Oh, I think I see you too good." No, I think indirectly he tried to mention the otherwise. But anyway, on these issues, I think after that meeting, the aftermath, came out a lot, and it involved human rights issues and other issues that you mentioned. It could be the obstacle to China for the development, because China still have to depend on the international arena or international cycle at a certain level.
Right.
But right now, at a less degree
Right.
these days.
But 1.4 billion population plus the dual circulation pattern that it wants to shift their self-reliance more to the domestic side and trying to develop their own innovation. That could be a clear signal to say that, okay, the rest of the world will be doing their own job and we are also trying to strengthen the country's economics foundations.
Dr. Jha mentioned about the full-fledged developed countries by the year 2035. Let me put a clearer pictures on this. If you look back 40 years ago, okay, when China invite the Western academician to come into the countries and ask them, how many years it's going to take, for China, to get out of poverty, okay? Most of the academicians say 100 years. In other words, take 1 century. China took 30 years to surpass Japan and become number 2 in terms of GDP size, economic size, just behind the US. 40 years to get out of poverty. So on that estimate, that means China shortened 100-year estimate to only 40 years. Okay. Now, after 40 years of development, now China is about almost 15 trillion, US dollars GDP size. Okay. The vision 2035. In other words, after 5 years that I mentioned, they're going to grow 5% annually. After that, I would say they would grow 4 to 5%, another 10 years. So totally 15 years. They would grow about 1 trillion US dollars a year. Almost double of the size of Thailand GDP these days. To Thailand, GDP size, exploded in China.
Right.
What it means is this. With 40 years development in the past, they reached 15 trillions. Another 15 years from now, they're going to grow another 15 trillion US dollars. That means what they have grown for 40 years, they're going to use only 15 years. The next 15 years. So by then 2035, they would have about maybe 30 trillion US dollar, economic size.
Wow.
So by then there will be a full-fledged, developed countries. They are not only going to have the highest numbers in terms of smart city. By then 2035, there will be the smart nation. So they could do it, all over the countries, digitalized.
Wow, that's very fascinating. So let's wrap up with the U.S. and China relations. Also that and also we can call it tensions. Before we can see a so-called trade war, and at the moment we are maybe in the period of tech war. Is there any possibility that we can see a green war? Because on the east side, if we look at Beijing administration, we see the promotion of the use of the renewable and clean energy, particularly with the solar and wind sector. But on the east side, President Joe Biden's policy is also would like to turn the U.S. into a green economy as well. So would you foresee any things about the future's war?
It could happen. I agree with you on this. But let me put it in more detail. We see trade war. We see tech war. Okay. Now what we are seeing right now these days, even in the U.S., I put it the Trump virus war. Okay, because this is what the former President Trump have put it along the way, create China, to be
Someone to blame.
Someone to blame, or the new major enemy to the U.S. Okay, so I put all this war together. I call it as Trump war, so that people can understand.
Right.
President Joe Biden tried to, of course, lift up the green energies. Also in China, they're doing this as well. Okay, Vision 2060. Okay, President Xi Jinping has already announced the new target for the carbon-free for the whole China. Only less than 40 years from now.
Right.
Okay.
That's very challenging because I think I heard that President Xi Jinping also announced that he tries to reduce the carbon emission.
Right.
Right. To become zero.
Right.
And it sounds challenging for the countries that has 1.4 billion populations.
But I think it's possible. You know why? Right now, China is the largest wind and solar energy. And every year, the proportion of this source of energy is increasing 1% in terms of the overall proportion of the energy uses in China. They also have put more effort on nuclear powers and everything. Last year and earlier this year, we probably have heard about the test and the launch of the project called artificial sun, artificial moon. All right, all this, they're going to make a new form of energies. Okay, we probably have heard about the quantum, computing. Of course, they will use less energy inside domestically. Once they complete, all right, or they can apply it to the manufacturing, industries. So I believe that with all this, China will be able to reach that goal, that dream of zero carbon emission, by the year 2060.
So that means that China can become one of the fully developed economies by 2035 as planned. Regarding about the externality, what has happened, but they could do it because of their single policy and one direction that they are going, right?
Yes. Let me correct myself. I maybe speak it too fast. 2000 this year, they walk into the 14 plan. They still call themselves developing countries.
Yes.
By the year 2025, which is about 4 years, less than 5 years from now, they're going to be the high income. They call themselves a high income nation. Right? 2035, they will say they will be the
fully developed economy.
Not by the year 2035, they will surpass the US in terms of economic size. But they will reach the full-fledged of the developed countries by the year 2000, maybe 50, I would say, because they plan to celebrate 100 years, of the PRC the establishment. Okay, so but they're going to be like I would say the model for many countries, with less or more number of population that can achieve something in one generation.
Wow. Okay. So let's wait and see then. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Phaichit, for sharing your insight today. Now, this is Biz and Beyond, the programs that bring you from the expert inside. Please press like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching us and see you next time. ขอบคุณค่ะอาจารย์ ขอบคุณค่ะ